Oh my gosh, he is here and on time if he doesn't crash. Yep, 1 minute. I already started streaming and I'm going to give everybody a chance to show up. That's the first thing. Well, a few people, you know. We'll give a few minutes, and while we're waiting for that few minutes, I'm going to show you something. A project that I've worked on, and then if you stick around for the 9 p.m. broadcast, you'll find out how to get a copy of it during our preview 2.0. But it's basically beta. It's what I call my save game viewer, and when I launch it, you just get a nice little gray box, and that's about all it works right now. Now, actually, it scans your save game files and shows you any save game in the list that has a game in it, and say I select save game number 7, it will tell you, it basically reads a couple of your XML files and gives you all the information about the save game. And then you can also click on the silo amounts and click on the multi-silos, and it'll tell you everything that's in your multi-silos. And so far, weather, it can tell you what your weather forecast is coming up on your save game as well.
Entered channel.
Hey Dan, how's it going?
Channel. Dan, copy of what?
Save Game Viewer. It's a program I've been writing. Nobody knows about it, but it basically shows you your save games. You guys are picking up the broadcast, right? Everything coming out good? Anyway, while we're waiting for a couple minutes, I just wanted to show you. And
Channel. Dan, sounds good.
And in the next broadcast at 9 p.m., I will let you know how you can get the initial copy. Now, an advanced version of this after 2.0 is released, I plan on adding in the detection of the Pleasant Valley 2.0 map and basically be able to pull up all your factory info and all that stuff. But this is just the first version, and I just figured I'd show you guys that while we're getting ready for map making class number 3. So, map making class number 3. We're going to open up our map that we were working on last week and the week before and get started on a few new. I don't have Bank Heist set up there, Nadad, but good try. We'll eventually work on that. Picking up where we left off on the map, we're going to go through a couple new features of terrain editing that I didn't show you. We're going to hopefully cover some more terrain painting, and then we will see what we have time for. Basically, what I wanted to show you this week is, remember over here we have this really sharp edge. We showed you how to make a really sharp, cool looking edge of a cliff, but it obviously doesn't look too natural. So we're going to show you today using the terrain sculpt mode. We're going to click that on, get our little circle here, and down below you'll see this erosion box. We're going to enable erosion, which by clicking the erosion, and I'm not even going to get into the different values much. You can experiment with the erosion effect values on your own to see what you can come up with. They're a little bit crazy to get through different values there. But we want to make sure that we're using the left mouse button set on add, because when you're using the terrain erosion tool, add brush operation only is when it works. Basically what terrain erosion does is it gives you we'll just click the mouse a couple times here, and you'll see it's giving us a very random pattern of hill types based on the erosion values that we have set. A lot more natural than the steep cliff. And let's say we bring up the I'm just going to try a couple different values here. Water evaporation 1, and let's see what we get down on this part. A little bit different, more straight down, but it's basically, and a lot bigger cliff at the top than over here. So if I bring these back down to 0.1, we probably should get a little bit of a slope. A lot less of this big slope. You see, it's cutting it a little bit less, but it's basically going to give you a way to make very random edge effects on your terrain, unlike the smooth effect that we have there. And I'll give you a better idea. We're going to go over to paint mode. Now if you remember, down here everything that's flat is 0, and we got the slope goes up. We're going to go into the terrain paint mode, which texture layer painting. I'm going to change this to rock because I want a rocky cliff. And the mouse button set to add, but I don't want to paint down here, so I'm going to just raise it up to 5 so it doesn't paint everything that's at 0. And then we'll go along the cliff, and you'll notice that it won't paint over here. It'll just do whatever is sloped 5 degrees or more. Gives you an easier way to scribble out your terrain. It also won't paint up top, so you can really quickly go through and just paint the cliff part that's at 5 degrees. If you don't like the way that this is blending down too far, you could change it so it's a little bit steeper, like 10 degrees. And actually, let me bring it back to 0 and I'll give you a better demonstration of that. We'll cut this back out right here. I'm going to bring it back to 10 degrees and go back to rock, and you'll notice it doesn't quite cut into the grass as much. Anything that's sloped 10 degrees or more, it will paint now. So this, where it's really steep, it actually boxes overlay each other too. So these boxes, you're actually painting in half of one, so it does get a little bit of the grass texture at the top. The next thing I wanted to show you is you might want to add some detail to your rock cliff, not just have it all be rock. So we'll paint a little bit more of that. The first 10 seconds was literally just introducing a program that I'll be replaying in the 9 p.m. and letting everybody know how to get it in the 9 p.m. broadcast. So, I like the rock, but sometimes a little bit of detail added to the rock would be kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is keep my slope, so I'm only working in the rock. I am going to go and select the dirt texture, and I'm going to use these values. I'm going to put them down all to 0.1 again. And we have it set so it's the terrain dirt texture at 0.1 on all these values. And you'll notice when I start putting dirt on here, rather than it just covering up everything that I put the cursor, it's going to add it much slower. And actually 0.1 might be even harder to realize. But there you go. You can see we're just drawing a little bit of dirt in there, not too fast. Give it a little bit of dirt texture to the walls as well. You might have a place where you want to run into some sand, for instance, and have the sand creeping down your hill a little bit. You can add the sand in, and it just adds a little bit if you put these levels down to 1. Obviously, if they're all set up at 1, it's going to replace everything underneath the brush, so you'd end up with that, which is not what we want. So adding a little bit of another texture over top of another texture, just set your values down to 0.1 and then it'll give you a little bit of that effect that what I'm looking for. A little bit of dirt running down the hill there. Alright, moving on to more terrain editing features. Over here last week we created this mountain where we're going to plant a forest eventually. And you can see it's very blocky around the edges. We want to always make that look a little bit more natural, and that's very simple as taking the add, turning it to smooth while we're painting, and picking either the leaf texture or the grass texture in the texture painting. And I'm going to use the leaves, and I'm just going to run that brush so it blends in the edge with the grass, so you don't have an unnatural looking edge as we're going around here. You'll notice it looks much better. Looks like the two are seamed together with a little blending going on. And you just have to go through and hit all your edges, clean it up a little bit, all the way around. Again, that's with the smooth tool set and using one of the two textures. If I was to do the grass texture with smooth, it's basically going to do the same thing, but it's going to cut into the leaf area rather than cut into the grass area. So either way works fine. Just select one of the two you're using and it'll smooth the rough edge out all the way around for a much better looking effect on the map. And we'll go around here. I think we got pretty much all of it done. The more you do, the more you'll get grass up into this area, but you pretty much are pulling the grass in. So yeah, you could get it really far up in there. You could start seeing a little bit more grass, so you can create a larger edge if you want to, just by keeps going into the grass and stretching it out and pulling it up. But gives you a nice look to the edge of the hill there that we did. Again, over here we created that lake last week, and I'm going to make this so it is a dirt bottom lake. We're going to go back to the add, and we don't want to paint on the top surface. We just want to paint the walls right now. So we're going to leave the slope limit at 10 degrees. If it was at 0, it would paint everything. 10 gives it only anything that's sloped 10 degrees or more. I'm going to switch it over to dirt, and we're going to paint the wall very easily all the way around the lake, wherever it's 10 degrees sloped or more. It won't go out there. We get a little bit quick, and then we can go back to 0 and fill in the lake bottom with dirt. And if we wanted to use that texture effect again and bring in some rock, let's try it at 0.2 this time so it goes a little bit faster. Let's bring in some rock into our water. Just tapping the mouse button, you can see it goes much faster adding the rock detail in there. And I am sloped down a little bit, so I'm going to go to a 0 and slope limit. Well, I'm going to slope limit start 0, slope limit end 10. Change back to grass. Oh, bring my values back up so I can do it a little bit faster. Did I miss something, or am I starting at 0, ending at 10? We're set to grass, but it's not adding it. Now, why is that? Well, we'll just set it back to 90, and we'll just cut out some of this little grass here. Pretty easy. So we have a little bit of a lake there, and I got a little bit carried away over here because it was a little bit sloped too much as well, so I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. And if we wanted to, we can create our road, which I like to use 4 as a radius setting with the square brush, and do a add dirt, make a dirt road over to the lake. Which you could put a dock or anything at the end of your dirt road. Obviously, you're going to go out of the lines like I did here, or you can go back to grass and just fill it in. That is pretty much all you're going to need to do with your terrain editing and painting. I'm not going to get too far in detail, but what I like to do as well, as I explained before, is basically color areas, like where I want to put a farm, or if I'm planning on putting another lake here. You can easily set up the map with certain areas. Maybe I want to put a farm with a cobblestone pad. I can know where I'm going to build around those areas later on when I build. I'll know where I want to shape my terrain, perhaps building mountains and stuff around that area, smoothing them out, and that type of thing. So with that being said, we're going to work into the third of all the buttons. Well, it's actually the fourth. We're going to skip the little blue one, which is the terrain info layer. That is used for doing the navigation messages, which we'll get to in another broadcast. And we're going to go to the terrain foliage paint mode, which is the little leaf here, and show you some of the basics of painting terrain foliage. Now you got your big, I'm going to make this really big because we really don't need to see the attributes at this time, but we have the foliage layer painting, and we're going to start out with grass. Just select the grass. When you get whatever item you select here is going to select bits. We call these boxes bits automatically. So rape, for instance, is foliage channels 1 and 2. You're never going to change those to stay with whatever you're using. Grass is automatically set to 1. Now, with grass set to 1, you're always going to want to have, when you're painting foliage layers, the add feature selected. You can use either the square or the round brush type, and you can change how big of an area you're painting, but you're always going to want to have the add feature selected when you're doing this. Now, 1 is the basic bit. Bit number 4 for grass does nothing. That's right. Bit number 5 we will show you. Plants basically a little bit of partially grown grass wherever you want to put it. So if we wanted to do it and start them off so they can't mow yet, you could plant some light partially mowed grass there, or partially grown grass. You could barely see it, it's very small. If we unselect 5 and we select bit 6, that's when we get the fully grown grass ready to mow. You got, when I'm talking about these bits, you might want to have a piece of paper down. There are so many different selections that we're going to get into that you might want to write these down and remember it. So I would recommend for grass painting, you put down bit 5 is short grass, bit 6 selected is fully grown grass, as we're putting down right here. Now with the other terrain items, such that the person who made this wonderful starter map added lots of different foliage types. We have all the crop types, which we will get into shortly. We have forest grass. Forest grass foliage channel selected as 0. Let's go over to the forest, where I'm going to have forest. And we will paint on some forest grass, which kind of gives it a little bit of a texture in the forest as well. I hope you guys can see that, but it's planting a little bit of forest grass on the mountain. And these are just decorative layers that we're working on right now. That one is one that comes with the basic map, and you'll see it in a lot in Bjornholm. So you have the forest grass texture. It's easier to see when you get down closer. It adds a lot more detail to the map by painting your forest grass on your forest area. But also included in here, and a lot of these are going to be names that are from another language, but jonks, as they call it, is, let me get a round brush. We'll show you a bunch of these different ones. Make a smaller round brush and paint some cattails, which aren't actually found around a forest usually, but they are found around lakes, so we'll paint in some cattails around our lake. If you think that's too much, you can also use the right click, which is giving me the right mouse button, subtract, and thin it out around the lake if you want, or make your circle smaller. But the jonks layer is your cattails, and you just paint them on. Don't even have to change any bits down here. It's automatically set to that. I'm not even sure what some of these are, so let's go through them. Your gazon is a different type of grass, probably greatly suited for right in the cattail area. Little like weed type thing. Arbust, or however you pronounce it, is that nice big weed, so if we wanted to have the cattails followed by a layer of weeds around the lake, we could do that. And they can actually mix. These layers, if you noticed, can actually blend together with each other. Only thing you got to remember is that if I right click to remove, you have to have the foliage layer selected that you want to remove when you're removing these. But he has a nice weed one built into there. And the one that bosquet or bouquet or whatever it's called is a nice bush. And again, with bushes sometimes it looks, you might want to just do really small dots so you get a random bush pattern rather than having big clumps of bushes. So we have the brush set to just a little over 1, and we're making a little bit of bushes out here in the field. Because you can see the pattern in these bushes, it's not as natural, so let's cut back some of those. That looks a lot better for random bushes. Whatever. Fogur 1, 2. There's a number 1. Let's see what we got here. It looks like a very similar but smaller to this weed over here. And quickly go to number 2. Lots of nice painting textures built into that. So it's a little bit different. And when you blend these together, you'll get different looks as well. What else do we have? H-A-I-E-S. Ah, nice big thick bushes. Do a nice big clump of thick bushes. Put some back here on along our lakeside. Sure, why not? Very cool. He has all the chopped straw textures in here as well, but the next one, this Eisenhut, I think is probably the last one. It's another type of grass. Goes very well with this map. And we'll put that in here a little bit, and we'll show you these what they look like on the map rather than in the editor when we're done. But those are basically the terrain detailing. You can go through those, and then if you want to have regular grass underneath everything, remember we're going to select 6 and just paint the grass underneath so it looks very nice. Now we have these bushes and everything around the fields. Lots of detail to your terrain. And you can paint it over your roads, so just trim it back a little bit with your remove, subtract, right mouse button. And voila, we have some nicely painted terrain. And that's pretty much as easy as terrain painting is. You can really do your map real quick. Again, if you're going to paint everything in grass in a large area, just enlarge that radius and begin painting. I have actually done it at times where I would zoom up here, looking down at the map, give myself a 200 square, and just, actually you could even do a 500 square in this area, and just do boom. It'll take a while for it plants, but now if I just go down there, I just did that whole area in grass. Simple as that. So you can really do large areas like that as well. But again, you're not going to want grass wherever you're going to put fields, which is the next step we're going to show you. We'll do a little bit of field work because everybody needs fields for their farms. Let me go over to a place on this plateau where I don't have grass planted. And I'm going to bring my radius down to 10. Now for drawing your fields, in the foliage layer you have the very bottom one, it's always the bottom one, is the terrain detail. You're going to select that, and it starts with foliage channel 0. What foliage channel 0 is basically a cultivated field. Draw it right on your terrain. You see it's the cultivated texture. But there's a problem when you do starter fields, and I do it all the time on my maps. And if you notice when you go into a map, I do it by accident because, well, make a long story short, when you change to a map so it can add more than the standard 15 fruit types, all these bit sets change, and there's no guide to what they are. So a lot of times I have it the cultivated texture, which really looks a lot like the other planted and seeded textures, which I'm going to show you. So this is cultivated. If I was to go and put crops on this field right now, you're going to get that hired workers keep stopping because it actually hasn't been seeded and planted texture, which is a different one. And I'm going to go through these textures right now. Foliage channel 0 is just a cultivated field. And again, you might want to watch this all back and make a list of these so they're easy to remember. If I turn off 0 and turn on foliage channel 1, what we have is just a plowed field. So if you wanted to start them off with a plowed field, but they're going to have to cultivate it before they do anything, that is foliage channel number 1. Bit number 1 on the foliage channel. Again, you're going to be in add mode to use all the foliage painting modes. And now we're changing this field over so it is plowed instead. But normally you don't start people with plowed fields. So we'll go to bit number 2. Bit number 2 is the seeded and planted texture. So if we're going to make a starter field, we're going to do it so we have the seeded and planted texture, bit number 2, down on the field. Now at times you might want to just start them with, most of the fields that you do should be the cultivated texture if they're not going to be planted, which is bit number which one? 0, for the ones that you're not doing a starter field on. But if it's going to be one of their starter fields, you want to put a crop on it, you're going to set it to bit number 2. Now everybody's joining raffle, and I don't even have anything to give them away. Save your points. There will not be a raffle in this broadcast tonight, but we will show you in the 9 p.m. broadcast how to get a copy of my Save Game Viewer program I've been working on. Anyhow, so there we have a planted and seeded field. Some people prefer to use round corner fields. That's very simple. You could set the round brush up, cut back a corner, bring it back, make yourself a nice rounded corner. If you want to have less of a rounded corner, just make a smaller radius, like on this corner, and then bring it back out, and you can make yourself a nice rounded corner field, like so. All depends on the radius you select. So you can make obviously a lot of different shapes depending on the radiuses that you use. You may, for instance, want to have a very, very large rounded but nice smooth rounded area. We'll cut this corner back and we'll make it a nice bigger rounded corner. Simple as that. Very strange looking shape. You can also use it to draw diagonals. Make your fields whatever shape you want. I just find it easier to obviously harvest on square fields, so I make them square, which I will touch up this field, and I gotta show you a few more things. I'm gonna go back to my square brush, get my, now this field is, remember, it's planted and seeded, bit number 2 that I'm working with, but there's a couple other things we can do with this wonderful field that we're creating. And the next thing I'm going to show you is, we've discussed bit 0, bit 1, bit 2, but you can see there's a lot of extra bits. And bit number 3, for instance, is one more seeded and planted texture that you're all familiar with. And that is your potato planted field. Planted and seeded potato field by doing bit number 3. So, thank you for the follow, X-King Fluffy 187. So bit number 3 will give you the planted potato field look, but we're not going to do a potato field right now, so I'm going to go back to bit number 2, turn off 3, get back to my regular planted potato, or regular planted field texture, planted and seeded this is called. Now, if you're going to plant and seed a starter field, it is always nice to give these guys a fertilized one. So, keeping 2, let's go and click on 4. 4 is our sprayed fertilizer. Simple as adding it to, while we have 2 selected, we're adding fertilizer to the field. And actually it will create, if you have 2 and 4 selected, it will create a fertilized field automatically. So when you're creating a fertilized field, you can start everybody out with fertilized fields. Just select bits 2 and 4. 4 adds the fertilizer, but I'm going over the top of what I already created. So bit 4 with whatever you have selected, which it wouldn't make, well, you could literally do a 0 and 4 and get a cultivated fertilized field, but they'll still have to basically seed it, and that will do that. But so you can use these bits in combination with each other. 4 always adds fertilizer. Now bits 5 and 6 are the last ones we have to discuss, and we're going to do it right on with 2 and 4, so we always have a fertilized ready to seed. But if I click on 5, you will notice that the angle, oh, actually 5 is already set to the default angle, so let's take 5 off. Let's click on 6 and you'll see I can't even see it for some reason. It's supposed to change the direction. It is doing something, but I can't tell. Maybe it only works on a cultivated field. Or maybe I have my bit sets wrong. Let's try it on a potato field, because those, it might even be look different in the game, but it's supposed to 5 and 6 in combination. We'll put back on the fertilizer. We'll also change, put back my cultivated field. They're supposed to do, bit 5 is supposed to rotate detail 45 degrees. Bit 6 rotates at 90, and bits 5 and 6 rotate it counterclockwise at 45 degrees, but for some reason it's not showing up, and it did earlier. It will probably show up in game, but basically the way the lines run are what bit 5 and 6 are supposed to do. Maybe it'll work better on a potato. Or maybe a plowed field even. So let's see, 3 with... Nope, not doing a thing. Let's try a plowed field and see if it works. Not working. It's supposed to change the direction. Do I have view detail? Let's see. Maybe, I don't think it's anything. Anyhow, usually shows up for me, but for some reason it's not. And basically it just changes the direction that the field is made in. Anyhow, you're going to be going around and creating your fields wherever you want your fields, however you want them, using your bits. I'll prefer 2, 4, 6, get myself a seeded and cultivated, but once you have a seeded and cultivated field, you should have something seeded on it. And I'll have to figure out just why those angles didn't change. And that's when we get into the crops. The foliage layer, you have your wheat, your grass, rape, barley, all the crops that are on the map are already built in, are there. So for instance, for this field we're going to select wheat. Now once you select wheat, it automatically changes the foliage channel to the proper wheat channel, but again you have the additional bit sets of 5, which gives us very small wheat. So they're not quite grown, but they have it planted on their field. So you could start them with a partially grown field. We can change that to 6 and give them a green, nice green field that is lot for next stage up, not fully grown, but we can paint it right on there. Or we can go to 5 and 6 together and give them wheat ready to harvest, already fertilized starter field ready to harvest. And we'll paint that on like so. Bits 5 and 6 will give them the ready to harvest. Now there is another feature. Let's see. There are other additional things, and I can't even remember them because I just never use them. But let's try 7 for instance. Bit 7 is your wither. You don't want to give them withered. Wouldn't be very nice. And I do believe bit 9 is give them some withered with windrow. Oh, that's a fun one. So bit 8 must be just windrow. Nope, bit 8 is withered with windrow. Or maybe if I turned off 7, I wouldn't have the texture. There you go. Bit 8 alone is some windrow covered on the field, ready to go. You can experiment with your bit sets. Give them a field that just has windrow to collect if you wanted to at the start of the game, like so. But the main ones to remember are 4, 6, fully grown, ready to harvest crop. Now, over here, we're going to go back to terrain detail mode, and I believe it was bit 3 is our potato with fertilizer, and we'll make them a nice potato field. And I'm kind of being sloppy, so don't mind me if I'm not square. You can clean up your own fields, but I'm just giving you the basic details right now. on what to do. So we've got a fertilized, and yeah, you could put potatoes on another type of field, but it wouldn't look right. But we have, so we're going to give them a fertilized and seeded potato field, and then we just have to go to the foliage layer again, select potato, and we are going to do it. Notice it selected bits 0, 1, and 2 are potato, and we know that 5 and 6 is a fully grown potato. Oh, nope, on potato it's withered, it looks like. So let's see, potatoes are a little different. 5 is this wonderful thing. 6 is your potatoes that are just about ready to harvest. So you can paint them on a potato field. And I never do starter potato fields, so that's why I'm learning right now as well. But it can be done. And what I'm interested in knowing, which maybe we can learn something together here today, because I never did a starter potato field in all my life. If you played any of my maps, you never had potatoes when I started the game. So we got a messy potato field, but what about, this is what I want to learn. Potato haulm. Do I just paint that on a potato field? That didn't do anything. Do I have to have bit 6 selected with it? I guess maybe it'll show differently in the map, and we'll go in and find that out afterwards. Maybe it's bits 5 and 6. Nope, bits 5 and 6 withered. Get rid of it. We don't want withered. But I guess you can plant the potato haulm, and that's pretty much potatoes. I don't know exactly what I'm doing with the potatoes. Have a ball. Figure it out for me. Leave me a message. Alright, but there's another very big thing, and I don't even know how he has this set up, but let's see if he has fields in here. The field definition. Obviously, if you create fields, we need to mark them as fields, and you might want to create them all on your map so you know exactly where they're going to be before you even do this step, but you do need to mark them as fields. So in the all you need, you'll see a category called fields, and it has field 1 already made. Let's bring down the terrain editing, and what I like to do is take that. Inside there you're going to have the field by trigger, the field dimensions, and the field map indicator. The first thing I do is turn all these to 0. Field by trigger, field dimensions, both of them at 0, corner 1, 0. This is going to make it very easy to set up your fields. We're going to set them all to 0, corner 3, set X, Y, and Z to 0. Field map indicator, X, Y, Z to 0. Now basically what I just did and is under field 1. We don't have to worry about field 1.
Farming channel.
But with field 1 set to 0, and again I forgot to do this the other day. Sometimes you might realize how you can't select anything, and that's because you got to make sure you're not in any of these modes to show anything that's selected. But once all these fields on field 1 are set to 0, the first thing I do, so I don't have to keep resetting them to 0, is I'll Control D, which duplicates the field, and I have 2 field 1s. So I select the second field 1. Over in the attributes box, I'm going to change it to field number 2. Hit enter, and now you see I have a field 1 and a field 2. They're both set all to 0 because I copied it while it was 0. All the indexes are 0, so I don't have to do it. You can set up many of these ahead of time if you want to, if you know you're going to have quite a few fields and you don't have to worry about it. But as long as you stay one ahead of where you're working, you can edit the first one and you'll still have one set to 0. Now, first thing is we have a field, and why I set them to 0 is I try to pick the middle of the field, Control B with field 1 highlighted, Control B and click in the center, and it moves everything to the center of the field. Our field marker is now in the center of the field. And again, you should probably design all your fields before you get into this, but our field marker is in the center of the field. Our field by trigger is going to be right there. The field dimensions will start in the middle. The number on the map, when we show it on the map, will also show up in the center of the field rather than off to the side. Now, some people like to put their field by triggers on the edge, which after the fact is quite alright. You can move your field by trigger separately. But I like to have everything in the center of my field, such as is. The next thing to remember is placing the corners of the field, and this works very well on square fields. It's going to be a lot more interesting with odd-shaped fields, and we'll get into that at some very later date, but we're giving you the basics. We have a corner 1, a corner 2, and a corner 3. And the first thing I want to show you about those corners, you need to know which direction is north on the map. And you could be moving around, and there's not much detail on this map yet. So my secret way of finding out which way is north is by going to create transform group. And then I'm going to just Control B, click, bring the arrows over. What you'll know is that the blue arrow is always pointing south when you create a transform group with no rotation. So now I created that transform group down here. It's showing me that that way is south, so that way must be north. Now that I know that, I can delete my extra transform group because I don't really need it. And the reason why you need to know that is because on your field, for placing corner 1, you're always going to want to start in the top left corner. You're going to make an L-shaped corner 1. Corner 2 is going to go there, and corner 3 is going to go here. Now, when I first started map making, I was getting fields that were cutting across the middle. It was crazy. I had no idea what I was doing. And you know, I was spinning the arrows around and getting them so they were facing different directions, rotating them. It just was messing everything up. All you need to do once you have the thing set in the morning, in the morning, whatever time of day you're doing it, is take it and highlight corner 1, find the corner of your field, and we're going to do the Control B, click, and it will put it right at the surface of the field, and that's corner 1. Secondly, we're going to select corner 2. Bottom left corner, we're going to find the corner of this field, and we're going to go Control B, click, and that's corner 2. Corner 3 is the bottom right corner, and Control B, click. We just marked a field. We have all 3 corners marked, which is awesome. Now that we have the corners marked and we have the field indicator, everything in the middle, we have a field area and a field price. And there's a third one that you can add into here, which is simply, and I usually add it to everyone. I forgot to do it before I created extras. And case matters when you do this, but it's going to be OWNED B, capital B, Y, and then the next word is capital PLAYER. We're going to leave the box set to Boolean and click Add. And now if you want this field to be owned by the player, when you first start the map, you would click, and we do because this is a starter field. We have it marked owned by player. Next, we have a field area. How do you determine the field area? Well, I came up with a simple program, or a simple way, and it's not 1000% accurate, but it's actually pretty good. And that is, let's take corner 1, 3. The third corner that we created is an offset from the first corner. So you have your translation of X and Z numbers. What I do is bring up my trusty calculator, and let's see, 48.586, so we're going to do 48.586, and we're going to multiply that by the Z value, which is 73.998, and we get this nice number of 3595.26. We can ignore the rest. Now, that number doesn't tell you too much, but I did figure out that if you divide that number by 12,400 is the number I always use. And it was a rough average. I did 100 different fields on the first map, and they ranged anywhere between 12,200-ish to about 12,600 and something. So 12,400 was right in the middle. And I divide that by 12,000 and I got 0.28. This field is very small, and it is a 0.289, so I'm going to call it a 0.29 field area, 0.29. The other formula I use is, I like my fields to be 45,000 per hectare. You can make them cheaper or whatever you want, but times that by 45,000, which is the standard that was in Hagenstedt. That's why I went with it. And then we have a new price of, what was that price again? Let's get the calculator back up. $13,050. So 13050. We just have a field area of 0.29 hectares. Very, very small field I made. And you could see it when we get in the map. You'll see just how small that field is. If we were doing some more realistic fields, we'll go back to terrain mode. Let's bring this back up, and we'll do a quick one more time. Terrain detail. Bit number, I have to look at a cheat sheet because I'm not used to these bits, but it's 2 is seeded and planted, and 4 being seeded and fertilized. And we're going to create a bigger box so I can draw it faster and do a nice, it would be nice if I had foliage layer, not that foliage layer. We don't want this. Let's start over here. We'll fix our boo-boo later. You want foliage layer selected with add terrain details 2 and 4, and we're going to make a much bigger field now. And just to speed things up, I'm going to go up here again, grab myself a 200 radius. Oh, maybe not 200. I'll be all over the place. We'll make it 100. And unfortunately, you can't see these things with the way the Giants editor is until you're right down on ground level. But we're going to make a bigger field really quick. And I'm not going to plant this one. I'm going to leave it fertilized for them, so when they come in they'll have it pre-fertilized. And actually I should have done it with just the cultivator texture, because I'm not going to make this a starter field for this demonstration. So yeah, I should go back over it with the cultivated field texture, which is the terrain detail just 1 or just 0. So it's not already going to be planted and seeded. We'll make it a little bigger. And I'm doing this really rough. I usually am a lot quicker, but we're running out of time here at 7:53. I like to keep these under an hour so they're not overwhelming and you can really work on what you've learned before the next session, which will be on Tuesday at 7 p.m. So we're just going to do a quick field here one more time. But this one's not a starter field. And it also runs down into there, but I'm not worried about that. What I will do is just come over here, terrain edit mode. I'm going to set to, well, let's get a smaller radius. And I'm going to right control, let's set replace, right control R. Sometimes, and this happens, if this changes to remove when you hit right control R and you're not getting the replace, it's a Giants editor bug. Just click somewhere, undo your click, and then hit your control R and it'll get you the replace value. And then we should be able to make sure we have replace set again and bring up the terrain to the level where I clicked it. Now, another Giants editor bug is shadowing doesn't actually refresh either until you either restart, or sometimes you can get it to by zooming all the way out and getting it to come back in, but it is flat. The shadow's still there. You can see when I get closer it's a little bit better. And hopefully they'll fix those things. So we're going back to my paint mode. We have the terrain detail. We still have it set to, nope, wrong one. Foliage layer paint mode. Back to add. Finish up my field. I just covered up some cobblestone, but that's okay. You're not going to see it unless you plow out the field. And we have a huge field, ready, fertilized, but not planted, so they're good. It's a little close to that field. I normally wouldn't do that, but it's a nice square field. Make sure we have it all so it's the same texture. And I'm not going to get too crazy with the border. Just get it a little bit better here. A little bit better. There we go. Have a nice square field. I already have field number 2 here selected. Let's turn off the foliage paint mode. Our X is way over there. We're pointing north. I'm going to zoom out, locate the center, and Control B, click. My field 2 marker is now in the center roughly of the field. Once again, we're going to open up the field dimensions and select corner 1. Come up to corner 1, which is top left. Control B, click. Select corner 2, which is the bottom left. And we're going to put it Control B, click. Now, the interesting thing about these fields being real close together, I didn't actually mark this as a field, so I could remove it, but you don't want them that close together, because if this was marked as a field, then they'd have to actually buy this one as well before they could do this corner up here. In corner number 3, Control B, click, and that's the left control. Go up here, we have now a 266. Let's clear it. 266.86 times 287.01. Divide that by my 12,400 that I always use, and I have a 6.17 hectare field. 6.17. Bring back my calculator. Actually, you could make it 6.18 if you want. It's closer to 6.18 than 6.17. And then just take my 6.17, and I used the 45,000 per hectare. price, and now we have a field that is 277,650, and I didn't add, but we can always add this into all the fields. Owned by player with the B and the P capitalized, but we're going to leave it unchecked so that this one isn't owned by player. But if you ever want to change your map later and make that one an owned by player, you can do it. So let's save everything. And we're saved. I'm going to close out the editor. And let's see what we've done so far today. Let me bring up my mod folder switcher. Make sure I'm in my map class folder. And start FS15. Find a blank slot. Start. We'll play normal. There's my sample mod map, which we'll get into naming that and setting all that stuff in another class someday. Yeah, you missed quite a bit. There's a lot to learn, but you know what? The video series is going to be great because you can go back and learn it at your own pace, but there is so much. We barely scratched the surface to map making, so people that want to move along faster will be able to move along faster, and if you're like me, you'll be watching the video 10 times just to get through and learn what we've taught you. So let me get a vehicle, and if you remember last week, we set up the money cheat, and I got to get a faster vehicle in there for the map making class, but I like my 7250. And we'll jump into that. And you can see the mess we made over here when we were doing terrain layers. We got the nice grass planted with the bushes in it. And we have all the different textures for the weeds and stuff that we were checking out, even the little one that's underneath there. The lake has a dirt bottom now with a little bit of rock in the bottom, which kind of looks cool. Some bushes along the side. Looking pretty decent around the lake, a very weedy area. Not too bad. And some bushes in the fields, which look kind of cool. Over here we smoothed out the edges a little bit. We'll see what a smoothed edge looks like in the map. And while we're at that, if we bring up our 9 key, you're going to see a place your PDA here. And down here, let me see if I can do this. Well, get out of there. I don't have any way to get that. Can I close that box and still get my map up? Yeah. Anyway, down in the left corner, you see field 1 that we made is green. That's because it's owned. We don't have the picture in yet. We'll show you how to make your own PDA map picture. But field number 2 is white because it's not owned yet. So they're in the background there. And you can see how we blended the edges of the leaves here so that they're just going into the grass a little bit. You don't have any sharp, ugly looking edges. And head over this side and see what we did. I don't even remember. Well, we know the fields are down there because they're marked on a PDA map, even though they're a little ways away. Drive under the roads that we never finished yet. Look at all the terrain sculpting from last week that we messed around with. There's some weird shapes. Over here we did our adding a little bit of dirt to the hills. You could see that, and you could see the erosion effect, how we didn't do a very good job with a couple of the points, but you got to come back in and smooth some of those rough spots out. But it does give it a really much more natural look to the rock face than straight up and down like this. And hopefully I made a spot that I can get up there. I don't remember if I have. It's not gonna get one that way. Originally I put a ramp, but I don't think it's... I don't know if it's low enough. Might have to come back next week to see our fields. I didn't really scope... Oh, I can drive up the road. Haha! Alright, test time. Let's see if we can get up the hill, or if I'm going to have to use a road. Because I really didn't plan ahead to make a road up there. A little steep, but we'll get there. And you can see the big field we just made is already fertilized but needs to be seeded. The marker is roughly in the center of the field where we could buy it if we have the 200 and some odd $1,000, which we do. And voila, we now own that field as well. And over here we have the little wheat field that we already created. And the big question I have of the day is, let's see, yep, wheat ready. See how small the field is? Now you know why it was a .29. You could literally do that field in 2 swipes maybe with a big harvester. Be done. But over here I want to see if I messed up let's see, foliage layer. Growth states. Not quite, actually. The map picture is a little bit off, so you can't really tell. Down here, it shows our potatoes. So it doesn't show the potato haulm. Oh, growth state. It's growing still. Alright, so we put down a growing potato. But the other one you could see is ready to go. And I think that's going to be about it for this class, guys. I hope you learned something. And we'll see what we're going to get into next week. We've got lots more to cover. We really got to get into adding some objects and manipulating your objects around the map so you can start decorating your terrains. Again, with next at 9 o'clock, we're going to be doing the preview, which we have some interesting news if you haven't been following, and a couple new additions, and I will be showing you how to get a copy of my save game viewer program that I wrote, and this is a basic start. Basically, you have your save games that you have save games in. You can select it and pull up all the information in a nice little program that tells you what you've been doing. This is actually our save game as of last week for Pleasant Valley, the one we're running on the server. So we had $3 million. We still haven't paid back our loan, as you can see, but we've fertilized liters 2,684,000 liters of fertilizer, and we've used 5,300,000 liters of seed. 347,000. It basically, this page gives you all the information about your save game, and you can set it to pull up any of your save games. Also, if you have a server and you have FTP access, you can fill out the boxes with your passwords, select the save game number that your slot you're using, log in, and it'll pull up your FTP server information. And when you have that logged in, not only do you have this amount, but you have your silo amounts page. Tells you what's in all your silos. It will work with any map, not just Pleasant Valley 15. And your weather forecast's actually written out in language you can understand. So you can expect rain in 2 days on day 89, starting at 13:20 and ending at 16:40 for a total time of 3 hours and 38 minutes. Basically gives you a little breakdown of what your when you could expect things to happen. Now the plan in the future to add on to this is to get it so it reads the vehicle XML file for version 2.0 when it's finished, and it will keep track of, literally you'll have pages hopefully to select Frito-Lay and boom, pull up quantities in your save game, latest save game, of what's in the Frito-Lay factory. I want to have options where you can view how many bales are on your map. So if you're having lag, you can maybe get a placeable count or a vehicle count and all that jazz into it. But obviously to program that part I need to have 2.0 done. So come around a little bit later, I'll show you how to get this beta copy of Save Game Viewer that I basically does what I showed you, and we will give you an introduction to what's new in version 2.0 that we added this week with some news about the fill type limit and what we're going to do. So thanks for watching, everybody else. Yeah, everybody that's out there, I'm trying to follow chair. Someone else got the script working. Oh, you're giving out the hints. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we did get a break to the 64 to 128, and it's changed our map plans drastically, so we'll discuss all that at 9 p.m. Come on back, and thanks for watching. And we'll catch you all later.